The Boxcar Children, Surprise Island, Chapter 9, A New Violin. Who do you think is going to get that? After supper, a few days later, the children sat resting in the doorway of the barn. "Listen," said Violet suddenly. Since Violet never said anything suddenly, everyone looked at her in surprise and listened. Then they heard the sound of a violin. "Who can that be?" asked Violet. "Let's find out," said Henry. Watts ran right to Captain Daniel's hut, and the four children followed. There sat Joe in the doorway, playing a real violin. He did not stop when he saw the children. They stared at him and watched his fingers fly as he played as fast a piece as he could. When Joe finished, Benny said, "I didn't know you had a violin." "Oh, please, play it again." "When did you learn to play?" cried Violet. "Could I hold it just a minute?" Jessie and Henry were too surprised to speak. This was not at all like Violet. When Joe handed the violin to her, Violet took it and put it right under her chin. "Play something," said Joe. "Oh, I can't play it," said Violet. "I just like to hold it for a minute under my chin." "Do you mind, Joe?" No, said Joe. But don't you want me to show you how to play it?" "Not now," said Violet. "You play some more." So here's Violet putting it under her chin. She gave the violin back as if she had played one all her life. Joe did play some more. First a slow little piece and then a faster one. But Jessie and Henry were not watching Joe. They were watching Violet. She stood without moving all the whole time that Joe was playing. Joe was watching Violet too. He was sure she could learn to play well because she seemed to like the violin so much. When the family went back to the barn at last, they were all thinking of Joe's wonderful playing. That night, when Jessie went to sleep, it seemed to her that Joe played such a sad piece that Violet cried. But when Jessie woke up, she knew it was real crying that she heard, for Violet was crying softly. Jessie got up at once. "What's the matter?" she asked, falling on her knees beside Violet's bed. Why are you crying?" I want to learn to play the violin," said Violet, starting to cry again. "Of course you shall," said Jessie. "I know Grandfather will buy you a violin, and Joe can teach you how to play it." "It's not that," said Violet. "You see, I want to practice, and it's so selfish to go off and practice all by myself when I ought to be helping." Henry came in with a flashlight. "Oh, my goodness," cried Jessie. "What can I say? You talk to her, Henry." "Oh, well, I heard most of it," said Henry. "She thinks she's selfish to practice when we came down here to have a good time together. Is that it?" "That's it," said Jessie. "Now, Violet, look here," said Henry. "You couldn't be selfish if you tried. We all want you to learn to play the violin. Most people don't even like to practice. You know that." Henry's little talk with Violet made her feel a little bit better. Soon they were all talking again and even laughing a little. "Shh," said Jessie. "We'd better be quiet. We don't want to wake up Benny. He would certainly howl." The children left Violet feeling happy again and thinking about the little violin her grandfather would surely buy for her. The next morning, Joe got Captain Daniel to telephone Mr. Alden. He listened to the story and thought about it, his own beautiful violin carefully packed away. "But," he said to Captain Daniel, "certainly Violet must have a violin. The only trouble is that I am too busy this morning to buy one for her." "Joe thinks he could pick one out," said Captain Daniel. "His playing is just wonderful." "That Joe's a very interesting man," replied Mr. Alden. "I'll have to talk to him when I come over. Give him the money for the violin, Captain, and let him buy one if he thinks he can." When Joe came back to the Alden Island with the little violin, Violet was waiting for him on the dock. Joe was sure that Violet could someday be a wonderful player, so he had bought a fine violin. The rest of the family came flying down to see if Joe had had any luck. After they all had seen the violin, Violet shut the case. "I don't think it likes to be outdoors," she said. "I don't think so either," agreed Joe. "Let's take it to the hut, and I will give you your first lesson." "I'll go with you," said Benny. "No, you had better stay at the dock with us," said and fish, said Henry quickly. Are you going to fish? Asked Benny. Yes, said Henry, who had not thought about fishing until that very minute. Just think, Benny, we've been here by the ocean 4 weeks and we haven't had a single fishing trip yet. Suddenly Henry found that he wanted to go fishing himself. You will find fish lines and bait in the old box under the dock, called Joe. Luck was surely with Henry. He baited a hook with a clam. Then he let down a long line and gave the end to Benny. Almost at once, Benny began to yell and pull up on his line, hand over hand. Good, cried Henry, when Benny finally landed the fish on the dock. What a wonderful fisherman you are, Benny. Wait, and I'll take it off the hook for you and put it on a string. So he already caught a big fish. It's so big. What a big one, said Jessie. Don't catch many more of those, Benny, or we'll be eating fish for a week. The children sat on the dock for a long time, but nothing happened. I wish I could catch one, said Jessie. Another fish like the one Benny caught, and then we would have enough for dinner. And I know just how to bake them with dressing. I'm getting tired of this, said Henry. I'm going to stop. I'm not, said Benny. My grandfather told me fishing takes lots of time. He did take you fishing once, didn't he? Said Henry. I remember I wanted to go, but I had to do schoolwork. He told me that if I think I won't catch a fish, then I will catch one for sure. And so when I do catch one, I'm surprised, said Benny. I see, said Henry, sitting down again. He tied his own line to the dock, and because he really did not think he would get any fish, he looked out at the boats. Henry had just sat down when Benny shouted, Hurry! You've got a fish, don't you see? Pull on your line. Benny jumped for Henry's line, and before anyone could help him, he pulled in another fish just like the first one. Oh, Jessie, isn't that something? They are 2 twins, I guess. I guess you are a fisherman of the family, all right, said Henry. You and Grandfather. I don't even know when there is a fish on my own line. Henry put a string through the mouth of one of the other fish, and Benny carried them proudly home. Joe can clean them for me, said Benny. Oh, I can do that, said Henry. I can clean fish, even if I can't catch them. Cut them in half, Henry, will you? Called Jessie. I will go in and start the dressing. Benny would not leave his twin fishes even for a minute. After Henry had washed them, Benny brought them to Jessie and stayed by her side while she put them in a pan. Jessie piled the dressing made of bread, onions, melted butter, and salt on the 4 pieces of fish. I guess they will be good, said Benny, as the oven door shut. He sat by the oven with the dog until Jessie said that it was dinner time. Violet came in. She put out her violin carefully away, but she did not talk about her lesson at all. What do I smell? She cried. It's the twins, said Benny. They are in the oven baking. Twins? Cried Violet. What does that mean? Jessie opened the oven door and took out the pan to show her. They are done. We can each have half a fish, she said, and Benny shall have his first because he caught them. She put the fish carefully on 4 plates. I wish Grandfather could see us eating your fish, Benny, said Henry. You're a very good fisherman. He's coming to visit us tomorrow, said Violet. He telephoned to Captain Daniel and said he would be here over tomorrow if it was all right. It's all right with me, cried Henry. And me, said Jessie. But what shall we have to eat? I suppose we ought to have some meat for dinner. I think Grandfather would like to eat just what we do, said Violet. Maybe Grandfather and I could go fishing, said Benny, but might not catch anything. Grandfather won't have time to go fishing, Benny, said Henry. Let's have dinner from our own garden. Remember those little vegetables we had in the boxcar days, Benny? Oh, yes, little vegetables with melted butter, cried Benny. Let's have vegetables. That's a better idea. Then we'll be sure to have some dinner, said Jessie, laughing.